SG Reads.
Before we start the video, please let's have a moment to honor and respect the late Jonathan Haas, who has passed this past weekend. I have just found this out myself and am saddened by this news as both a King of the Hill fan and someone that met him briefly in passing. He was a nice man, a good man, and you could tell loved by so many, including those of his family and friends, people that knew him deeply and loved him deeply. Let us show their respects to them and should give them as much love and attention as they need, for that this is truly a tragedy, because while most of us are just fans, it's the families that really do suffer during this time. And let us show some respect. Let us remember that he is a man that has made us laugh, that has intrigued us over the years, that he's brought us joy with either John Redcorn of King of the Hill or his character from Parks and Recs, and even those who he talked to on the hotline during the COVID era, where he helped get people through a rough patch here and there. Let us hope that he can now rest, and that he is able to find peace in wherever in the grand universe he may be. Thanks again for watching, and let's continue, shall we? Now, as some of you may know, King of the Hill itself will be coming out August 6th. Now, that's very close. It's only a few months away. And with that being said, we don't really have that much information about it. We have an intro that gives us Easter eggs and hints here and there. We have synopsis explanations here from the original series, but on the whole, we don't really have much other than that. So, for the most part, we do have speculation, we do have story, and for right now, I just want to talk about what does that mean, what's happening, what has happened since the time the series ended to where it will begin currently. So, with all that being said, let's dive on in and try to dissect and explain what's happening so far. But before you do, please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. It really helped me out. Let me know if you like this content. If you have other series or shows that are coming out, movies like that, please let me know. I'd love to theorize, talk about, or whatever. And I'm sure that a lot of people have their own opinions about what the season of King of the Hill has in store as well. So, let's get started, shall we? Now, the question on everybody's mind, mainly because this is a time skip, is where is Bobby? What is he doing? And for the most part, we've got an answer for that, which is why I feel makes the most sense to cover that right now. Now, it seems to me that Bobby, at the age of 18, started working as a cook, as a chef at a local restaurant, and even became famous for King of the Grill, a Master Chef style TV show, or maybe even the barbecue show in some ways. So, we do know that for a fact is where he is in the story. In his early 20s, 21st birthday may have just passed, and that he is currently trying to figure out what he wants to do next with his life. But we don't really know anything before that, mainly because we always assume that maybe he just grew up in Ireland along with Hank and Peggy, but now we're realizing that might not be the front of it, because as we've seen in the intro, Bobby leaves too, but it doesn't seem like he goes with his parents to where they were, which is where I'm going to talk about next. What we do know is that Bobby seems to have stayed in Texas, where it seems that when he was 18, he moved to Dallas and started this kind of career to begin with. So where was Bobby in this whole scenario? He couldn't have been living with Lucky and Luann. They live in the cul-de-sac as well. They live in that Ireland along with right next to Bill's house. So that in itself doesn't make sense because everyone obviously is crying that Bobby is leaving. The best option I have for this would be that he went to go live with Cotton's wife after he died. I mean, you know, Bobby is his grandson. So maybe in a effort to stay in Texas but not go too far away, he stayed with Dee Dee. And of course with GH, Good Hank, Hank's brother, or Bobby's uncle. Now, we do have several hints here and there that might have been the case, but the reason I think that might be the direction it's going is mainly because he couldn't have stayed with Hank's mom. She likes to live in an RV and has been traveling across the country for as far as we know. She does have a wild personality, and Bobby himself doesn't really care for that kind of sentiment. He prefers having somewhere to stay, somewhere to sleep, and somewhere to be comfortable while pursuing his own careers. Now, we don't really have much other information from that, but that would probably have to be my best guess in where Bobby has been this whole time. And he was probably raising GH along the way along with Dee Dee. So that's the best we got as to where Bobby has been this whole year. And when we catch up to him from the kind of sneak peeks that we've seen from the latest convention, we do kind of see that he's going back to college, either to learn, to be a student, or just learn what people are eating, learn from different cultures, and is trying to improve his cooking skills, period. Because it does seem to be where the competition is leading in the very first episode. Now, the biggest question is that we have gotten answers for just recently in the synopsis of the series, or of episode 1, is where has been Hank and Peggy. Naturally, we all thought that they would have stayed in their family home for a long time, but from the intro that we got as before all these sneak peeks and the synopsis, we see that they moved out and were at the airport for a minute, and that they allowed somebody to stay in their house. And I say allowed to stay in their house, like renting, because we don't actually see a for sale sign go up. They didn't make a note not to show that, instead show somebody moving right in. And we do see him as an appearance at the very middle way of the series. So that leads me to think that he rented out the Hill house to somebody at Buck Strickland's or Strickland Propane. So that would probably have to be the best scenario for why the house hasn't been on sale and why they're jumping right back into it at this current point. But what we do know is that where Peggy and Hank were, is that they were in Saudi Arabia. There they were kind of being propane salesmen, according to the synopsis, where Hank was kind of the manager at that place. In a sense, he was trying to build up a retirement fund in a more profitable area. And the only profitable area that seems the Strickland Propane seems to have is in Saudi Arabia. It's an odd take and kind of different, but we can definitely see that Hank has grew an appreciation for everything he has back home. Because when we see Boomhauer give him a hug, we don't see Hank push him away. In the old series, that would have been Hank's natural reaction. But in this series, we do see that Hank has kissed the ground of Texas when they land in the plane, and just shows that he has a deeper appreciation for all things Texas, for all things that he knew, for the grass he mows, to the meat he grills, that he's grown an appreciation for it even more now that he's been gone for so long. But that in itself is causing him a culture shock, because now that Texas, or the United States itself, has changed over so many years, because this is taking place in recent time. This is taking place in either 2024 or 2025. We know that because COVID has happened. So Hank and Peggy may have been in Saudi Arabia for about 5 to 7 years. At most. They could be there for a shorter time, but that does seem to match up with Bobby's age, seeing that he may have been in high school when they moved away. So for the most part, we do know that there might be a 5 to 7 year gap where Hank and Peggy did not live in Arlen, Texas. And that's going to cause some stirs. All the characters have moved on with their own stories, with Dale being mayor, Bill discovering Megalo Eats are his version of Uber Eats, and even Boomhauer seeming to have a family at this point. So there's going to be a lot of adjustment, not just for Bobby at this point, but for Hank specifically, having to adjust to this new world that he himself is not really aware of. Now, with all that being said, we do have a lot of what episode 1 is going to be. In fact, I do think that a lot of the clips we've seen, a lot of the things that are going to be mentioned, are going to be in episode 1. That being that Hank and Peggy have moved back. It's been 7 years, and they are finally starting to get their lives back in order. Starting to repair their house, starting to get a little new dog, as we've seen in the smaller kind of behind the scenes clips here and there. And for the most part, it seems that he's having a difficult time. Maybe the grass isn't greener as he thought it was. So for right now, we do know that the first episode involves Bobby coming back as well. Now with that, we do have the title of the episode, Return of the King, because we have two different ways that can be interpreted. Either King of the Hill, Hank Hill himself, or King of the Grill, Bobby himself. And I think it means both. Bobby is coming back home so that he can live with his parents again while he's sorting himself out. Not just as a chef, maybe trying to start his own restaurant in Arlen, but maybe to try and decide if he wants to go back to school. And Hank is here or there with it. I think he's just happy to have Bobby back in the house. Because as I've said before, it seems he's missed those attachments he's had. He's missed the guys in the alleyway, and he's missed his family. So for the most part, I do think that this is going to be about Hank trying to reclaim what he had, while at the same time accepting he has to let go of what he doesn't. So that does kind of lead way into that clip we saw where Hank is talking to a person about what it means propane is to everybody. And that means mowed lawn, family, values, and all that. And that is him trying to say why propane is superior or why it should stay the same, why things should be the same. So that's mainly going to be what the either first or two episodes are going to be about the transition for both Hank and Bobby, with Bobby being a man and Hank barely coming back into the alleyway. So it does give a lot of conflict, it does give a lot of interest, and we'll definitely see how their kind of point of views will kind of coexist at that point. We're going to see that there is value in both perspectives. And I do think that Bobby himself is in fact going to end up defending Hank. But at the same time, Hank's going to have to accept that Bobby's way of doing things with charcoal, because as we know, Bobby loves cooking with charcoal rather than propane, is still valid. Not his way, but he can accept it at this point. One of the funnier ideas that we could possibly have is with Dale. I think throughout the season we're going to have him running for mayor, which in itself is a lineup for comedy. Because Dale is out there, he's a conspiracy nut, and he would think that this is the best time to expose all the conspiracies that the government, aka the mayor's office of Arlen, Texas, has for the most part. I do think that he just is pretty much doing it just for that reason itself. Maybe he wants respect from Joseph, like he has in the original series, and maybe he wants to prove something to Nancy, but for the most part, I can see that that's his main thought process for why he would want to be mayor. Now, because Bobby's probably going to be 50% of the series, and it does make sense that at this point in their lives, Bobby would be the main character, we're going to see his relationships between Connie, Joseph, and even Chang Wasana-song, who was a surprise character to come out as a friend of Bobby in his later years, how they react to one another, how they have stayed connected, or the lack thereof. I think for a fact that we know that he lost contact with Joseph and Connie, because Connie, when we see her in the clips, it seems that she's surprised to see him. She's not really sure why he's there, what kind of speaker he's meant to be, or if he's even there to be a student. So, for that matter of fact, it seems that she has kind of moved on with her life, or at least is in a place where she's comfortable, at least. Joseph seems to still want to be tagging along with Bobby. In fact, I would have to say that Joseph seems like one of those most characters that seems to be lost in life, personally. Mainly because we don't see him really change that much. We still see him in the same outfit that he'd had in the original series, kind of refusing to grow up in a certain way. And, well, most people do have growth spurts at the age that the original series had, and they don't really have much after. That does say a lot about Joseph's character. Maybe this will be showing a build-off point for him. Maybe we'll see him take on Dale's dead bugs, going on to Dale and family's dead bugs. So we'll see how that works out. But for the most part, we can see that this is Bobby reconnecting, not just with Hank, but everybody in his old hometown, all the people from his childhood, and even those that he seems to have forgotten, period. So this is a good idea to kind of retract, while at the same time representing the series as a whole. Trying to be something familiar and at the same time something new. And that's kind of what Bobby's going to be. Bobby is going to be kind of the embodiment of the series himself. Something that's grown up, something that it's been a minute and has decided to come back. And has seen the world and see it change. He's been part of that change, but at the same time, he still sees and feels how big a gap there has been in his life. Now, the biggest question that I know a lot of people have is, who is this? Who is this guy living in the Hill house? Now, that being said, I think the simplest answer is the correct answer, and that he is the working assistant manager when Hank's been gone from Strickland Propane, and that he has been renting out the Hill house for as long as Hank and Peggy have been away, keeping up maintenance, living there, and kind of making it his own, even hanging out with Dale, Bill, and Boomhauer. And he seemed to have stayed there for quite a long time up till the Hill's return. So I do think that he was an addition to the group, but ultimately didn't fit in quite well, mainly because they couldn't accept the fact that Hank was gone. It seemed like they were all having that kind of troubled issue, with Dale being Dale, trying to figure out what it's like to live without Hank. We saw that Bill has started overeating. Now, we know that Bill is a little heavier than he was in the main series, and has really sunk in the food, and that he took the moving of the Hills out of the country altogether really hard, and was even willing to accept that they may not come back or they may come back. I think he was always hoping, but ultimately started divulging himself into food. Boomhauer seems to have moved on himself. As I said before, we get a small clip that he has a wife and kids now. We don't really know much about that detail, but it does seem to have some leeway, and she might be one of the persons we saw at the very end of the series. So, with that being said, that's all we kind of know about the mystery character and where the gang has been since then. And it seems that they have all had a rougher time moving past Hank's moving, and are kind of going to have a hard time with his returning, with Peggy trying to join them as well, and Dale still having an issue with it as well. Alright, with all that being said, please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. It really helped me out. Now, this is just my opinion of what I think is going to happen in at least the first couple episodes of the season. If you have a different opinion of what's going to happen overall, please leave it down in the comment section. I'd love to hear. I haven't really heard anybody's point of view on this. I do know that a lot of people have done videos on this, but this is just my take. This is just what I know, or at least what I think I know. Please give me your opinions. I really would like to hear. I'd like to see other stories, and I just can't wait for the whole King of Hill season to appear. I know it's only 3 months away, but it feels like forever. Thanks again for watching. I hope to see you guys next time. Have a great one.